When you think of Norway, several captivating images likely come to mind: the sun that never sets during the summer, vast stretches of pristine nature, and the fact that it's consistently ranked as one of the happiest countries in the world. You might even picture polar bears roaming freely in the wild, enjoying the cold climate just as much as the human inhabitants seem to enjoy life in this remarkable country. It's a place that conjures up images of serenity, untouched landscapes, and a high quality of life. So, naturally, you might be tempted to book a trip to this northern paradise immediately. But before you start packing your bags, there's something important you need to consider. Norway is expensive, really expensive. One of the first things you'll notice when planning a trip to Norway is the high cost of living. Fuel, for example, is 10 to 15% more expensive than in many other Western European countries. Filling up your car for a scenic drive through Norway's fjords will come at a premium. And when hunger strikes, be prepared for some sticker shock. A meal at a cafe for one person can easily cost around $30, and that's for something simple. If you're lucky enough to find a hotel room for $100 a night, consider yourself fortunate, because accommodation in Norway can get quite pricey as well. If you're curious about why Norway is so expensive, just try Googling the most expensive countries in the world. Norway consistently appears on this list, alongside countries like Switzerland and the United States. But seeing Norway among the ranks of the most expensive nations can be surprising to some, given its small population and relatively remote location. Nonetheless, the reality is that a family of 4 would need more than $4,000 a month just to cover basic living expenses in Norway, and that doesn't even include rent. According to experts, living in Norway is about 7% more expensive than living in the US. What's especially interesting about Norway's economy is that it bucks certain global trends. Typically, the richest countries have national currencies that are stronger than the US dollar. For example, the Swiss franc is well known for its strength, and the Kuwaiti dinar is one of the most powerful currencies in the world. Just one Kuwaiti dinar is worth about $3.25. Yet, despite Norway's wealth and high standard of living, its currency, the Norwegian krone, is considered one of the weakest in the Western world. This seems puzzling at first glance. How did Norway, a country with vast natural resources, end up with such a weak currency? Historically, the Norwegian krone was a strong player in the global financial arena. It was known for its stability and smart money management. But in recent years, the currency has experienced a dramatic decline, especially when compared to the US dollar and the euro. Over the past decade, the krone has fallen sharply, raising concerns among central bankers and financial experts around the world. The decline is largely attributed to the fluctuating price of oil, a commodity that plays a huge role in Norway's economy. Although oil prices have been relatively high in recent years, the krone remains weak. This weakness in the currency has a ripple effect on everyday life in Norway. Prices for goods and services have risen significantly because the country relies heavily on imports. As a result, inflation is a growing concern, and the central bank, known as Norges Bank, has been forced to raise interest rates to combat it. These high interest rates are putting pressure on the housing market, and making life more expensive for ordinary Norwegians. One possible explanation for Norway's high cost of living is the weak national currency, but it's not the only factor. Norway's cold climate also plays a role in shaping its economy. It's hard to imagine a country with such a frigid climate being among the wealthiest in the world. After all, when we think of rich, oil-producing nations, we often picture warm, sunny places like Dubai or Saudi Arabia. These countries have strong oil-based economies and incredibly robust currencies. But Norway stands as an exception to this trend. There's a fascinating theory that colder climates force people to be more resourceful and innovative just to survive. In harsh, icy environments, people had to work harder to build shelters, stockpile food, and keep warm during long winters. In contrast, people in warmer climates often had an easier time finding food and resources year-round. This theory suggests that colder countries developed a stronger work ethic and a greater need for technological advancement, leading to their current economic success. While this idea doesn't apply universally, tropical Singapore, for example, has become one of the wealthiest nations in the world. There's some truth to the notion that the climate can shape a country's economic fortunes. Cold places like Norway had to innovate and adapt in ways that warmer countries did not. Even within countries like Australia, colder cities like Sydney and Melbourne tend to be wealthier than their warmer counterparts. For example, Darwin, the warmest city in Australia, lags behind in terms of economic growth. But Norway's journey to becoming an economic powerhouse wasn't easy. The country faced tough times in its past, dealing with harsh winters, rugged geography, and even famines that pushed many Norwegians to leave their homeland in search of a better life in places like the United States. So how did Norway go from being a struggling, agrarian society to one of the wealthiest countries in the world? The answer lies in its natural resources, particularly oil and gas. Although Norway is a small country, it holds about 0.31% of the world's oil reserves, which has had a massive impact on its economy. But oil isn't the whole story. Other countries, like Venezuela, have far larger oil reserves. Venezuela holds about 20% of the world's oil, yet their economies remain unstable. So what sets Norway apart? Norway was able to use its natural resources, not just oil but also timber and fishing, to build a robust and diversified economy. During the Age of Sail, Norway was a dominant force in the European lumber trade. Its vast forests and strategic location allowed it to export timber across the continent. By the 20th century, Norway had developed a world-class merchant fleet that helped fuel its economic growth. Despite being labeled as a poor country in the 19th century, Norway's GDP per capita was higher than that of many Eastern and Southern European nations. Norway's rise to economic prominence continued with the discovery of oil in the late 1950s. Today, petroleum activities are a cornerstone of the country's economy, but Norway didn't just rely on oil to get rich. The country made a series of smart financial decisions, including the creation of a sovereign wealth fund known as the Government Pension Fund Global. This fund manages Norway's oil wealth, ensuring that the country's riches are invested wisely for the long term. Currently, the fund is worth around 1.7 billion Norwegian kroner, or over $60 million. The government uses the interest generated by the fund to bolster its annual budget, ensuring that Norwegians enjoy top-notch healthcare, education, and social services. At Waves Discovery, we explore how Norway, despite its high cost of living and weak currency, has managed to maintain a prosperous and stable economy. The country's future looks bright, especially as it continues to invest in sustainable technologies like offshore wind power, which will help secure its place as an economic powerhouse even after its oil reserves are depleted. While Norway is expensive, it still doesn't hold the title for the world's priciest place to live. That distinction belongs to Monaco, where property prices soared to over $50,000 per square meter in 2022. But if you think that's shocking, there's an even more surprising contender, Ashgabat, the capital of Turkmenistan. There, a gallon of milk can cost $15, and an internet subscription might set you back $168 a month. These extreme prices are due to the country's fixed exchange rate, which has been in place since 2015, leading to a severe disconnect between local prices and global currency values. At Waves Discovery, we continue to uncover these fascinating economic stories from around the globe. Stay tuned for more as we dive into the mysteries and marvels of the world economy, exploring how geography, history, and innovation shape the fortunes of nations.